Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap up for Friday, September 23rd, 2016, the WNW 255. I did not have, as a little programming note here, I did not have a weekly news wrap up last week. A lot of you were worried about me. Something happened. Nothing happened. Nothing really at all bad happened at all, period. End of story. I'm fine. I'm in good health. I just had a killer interview with David Stockman. It took me 4 months to book this man. It was more than a 40-minute long interview. I thought it was critical and crucial information, and I put it out and let it run through Sunday. Actually, Tuesday night, Wednesday morning was there when I put up another thing. So that was the only thing that happened. I just thought the Stockman interview was fantastic. I mean, really, it's huge. He got a new book out called Trumped. He talks about how we got where we're going, how bad it is, how vast it is, and how maybe we can get out of this mess. It's going to involve some pain, though. But anyway, that's my programming note. I want to start off with my first story. No, it is not the protests in Charlotte or the police shootings of African-American males or anything like that. I'm going to get to that. But that's not the big story. And the big story is way underreported. I would have done this in last week's weekly news wrap-up. Ceasefire takes effect in Syria. I thought, wow, maybe they're going to stop shooting. Well, this didn't even last, 5 days? It lasted less than a week, and boom, and I mean boom, U.S. airstrike could derail ceasefire. You think? You work out Kerry and Lavrov, Kerry's counterpart, work out a ceasefire, and then we send 4 jets, 2 A-10 Warthogs and 2 F-16s to attack a known military position of the Syrians. We killed now, the number's up to 83 Syrian soldiers, wounded more than 100. A little more additional reporting here. This wasn't reported in the stories in the mainstream press stories, but supposedly, and I can't confirm this, there were Russian commandos involved. There were Iranian soldiers involved, Hezbollah people involved, Palestinians involved. Russia went and called an emergency meeting at the UN, where it's hotter than a pistol over this. I mean, they felt like they were stabbed in the back. You don't send 2 F-16s and 2 A-10 Warthogs, and I think the F-16s likely came in first and knocked out all the air defenses and pummeled them pretty good. And then probably the A-10 Warthogs, which fly low and slow, did a number on them. I mean, they killed 83, wounded more than 100. I mean, they wiped them out. It was on the top of a hill, a position overlooking an airport that protected an airport. I mean, I wish the U.S. military was this rough on ISIS. The Russians claim that, the U.S. acted as ISIS's air force. On the other side, the U.S. says, oh, no, it was a mistake. I mean, a mistake? I mean, this isn't like a stray JDAN that got off course or a stray F-16 that saw something on patrol and got his coordinate. This is a known military position. And then you find out that as payback, and of course, the Assad regime denies this, that they attack a humanitarian convoy, and they can't work out a deal to get it in, and both sides now majorly mistrust each other. The U.S. claims that, Assad is just using, the ceasefire, was just using the ceasefire to resupply. Assad and his regime says, well, the rebels, and listen, the rebels, ISIS. I mean, remember when they used to come up with this Free Syrian Army? Have you heard them talk about that? That's because it doesn't exist. It maybe one time did in 08 or 09, I don't know, but it probably did, but not now. I mean, ISIS is so crazy, they killed all the mild, Al-Qaeda. And so this has no daylight, no end in sight. And then we have this little story. This is from Fars News Agency. So this might be a payback, but I couldn't find. Russian warship off coast of Syria targets, destroys Foreign Operations Center. That's the quote. U.S., Israeli, Turk military officers killed. Now, I cannot independently confirm this. This is from Fars, the Iranian news agency. I can confirm this, which, if this doesn't show you things are heating up in the Middle East, that this couldn't be a wider war. I don't want to get up. It could be World War III. Well, it could. I mean, everybody's involved there. France, the U.S., Britain, China, Iran, Russia. I mean, you name it, everybody's involved in that section of the world. And here is Russia now deploys a flagship aircraft carrier to Syrian coast in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. So this is big trouble, folks. I mean, they couldn't even get a ceasefire to last a week. And then we have this, and both sides pointing fingers. And this is what you need to know. We're close to war, folks. And we're close to a much wider regional war. And with the firepower, you don't send your flagship aircraft carrier. Russia doesn't have very many of them, but they sent it to the eastern Mediterranean off the coast of Syria. Now, this is big trouble. And we are close, and this is way underreported, we are close to touching off a much wider war. And when you're talking about nuclear countries, that Russia is aligned with China. China is aligned with Russia. Now, supposedly China doesn't have its troops there, but they, a month or so, a couple of months ago back, pledged their support to the Russians and the Syrians. So this is a big deal, huge deal, that this piddly ceasefire couldn't hold more than a week. I think it was 5 days, and it wasn't even holding then. So I also got on the phone to Paul Craig Roberts. He was a huge success. He brought up the idea that that the Russians now they can't do diplomacy, and there was a big spat in the UN, and Samantha Powers smarted off to her counterpart, and this is serious stuff. It's almost like they're inviting war, and that's why I wanted to bring up Paul Craig Roberts. I called him on the phone and said, hey pal, you're a big hit and all, great stuff. I mean, you got 40,000 views in a day or something like that. And he said his sources say, and he's worried that the neocons don't want to start a war, that this wasn't a mistake. Send 4 jets into a pinpoint location and having an attack that lasts 15 minutes. And wipe out an entire known military position. It'd be a mistake. I just find it hard to believe. That's what the U.S. Pentagon said, a mistake. And then says, Russia's got blood on their hands too, and Syria has blood on their hands too, and they're bombing this food convoy. And that may have happened. I don't know. But he says they're trying to start a war because they fear Trump is going to be elected, and then he'll just walk into office with a full-scale shooting war at the time he gets sworn in. So, that's what he thinks. That he could win. Or, there's other theories out there that there won't be an election. That they'll call off the election, that something will happen to Hillary, or we'll be in a full-blown war, or somebody does something with a nuclear weapon somewhere, a suitcase nuke. I don't know. Things aren't looking good, and it seems to me the Obama administration, they lost, they made citizens of people they were going to deport, 850 some odd people. I mean, this nobody gets fired over this kind of stuff. And it appears that the Obama administration is trying to institute as much chaos as possible. And then say, oh, no, don't worry about the, Islamic terrorism. Well, they won't even call it that. Don't worry about the, the extremism, They don't even call it that. And then we have all these Black Lives Matter, which reportedly has now $100 million in funding. Thank you, George Soros, for trying to overthrow America and make things as chaotic as possible. You weasel. He should be arrested if he sets foot in America. I mean, it's outrageous. And then we have the shooting in Oklahoma City or in Oklahoma, and the officer there charged with first-degree manslaughter. That's going to be a tough case to prove, being of that. And I want to get into this. That the thing they have in common with that in Charlotte, supposedly the African American police chief says that person had a gun and was a felon and shouldn't have had a gun, had an ankle holster. So there he had a concealed weapon. And so, we got to, and every time that guy in Charlotte was shot by an African-American officer. So no matter what, though, here's the picture I got, no justice, no peace. There's a little girl popping up behind it. And this is what they're teaching their kids. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. Let me tell you why this is going on. This is going on. Because I think the Democrats are scared that after 8 years of Obama, that black African American people are scraping the bottom of the bucket. They're behind the Latino immigrants, the illegal immigrants. They're behind the refugee. They're bottom. They're at the bottom. They have huge numbers of unemployment, anywhere from, the 10.5%, 12%, 15% to 35%, depending on the age group and the city they're in. They've got huge increases in food stamps. They've got 70% of kids in the African-American community, in the urban areas especially, are born out of wedlock. No daddy, no baby daddy. And of course, they don't want to address all these jobs leaving the country. The African American president, Barack Obama, is for the Trans-Pacific Partnership. You notice he doesn't talk about how it's going to be jobs here. And as I brought this up before, Barack Obama's over in Vietnam telling them it's going to mean jobs for you. Why doesn't he say that here? Because it's not going to mean jobs for us. And it's going to take away jobs and take away sovereignty. And so they don't teach their kids that, hey, the African-American president has done nothing, and Louis Farrakhan, who's a Muslim, and he's hardly a cracker, or hardly a neoconservative, hardly that, and he says, he's been out saying that Barack Obama has failed the African-American community. I don't like to agree with anything Louis Farrakhan says, but in that case, he's right. And the problem is African Americans, they're not stupid. They got bad leadership. They don't want to address all these problems. They don't want to address the high crime rate. Oh my gosh. I mean, you got 13% of the population in America is African American, and they're committing something like 50% of the crime. And if you boil that down to throw out all the old people and all the kids and students and things like that, you got about 6 or 7% of the African American population committing about 50% of the crimes. Nobody wants to address that. Nobody wants to address the terrible schools. Nobody wants to address, and if you address these issues about violence and African black-on-black murders, which is, 90% of African Americans are killed by other African Americans. We don't have, statistically speaking, a white-on-black, white officers are hunting down black people and killing them. That's not happening, folks. I mean, look at Chicago. That's a disaster. It's a national disgrace. I mean, a few weeks ago, they're up to 500 murders, which in some years, that's what they have for an entire year. 500 murders, black-on-black crime is absolutely crazy. Look at the disaster in Detroit. Look at the disaster going on in all these areas that are controlled by Democrats in Baltimore. Disaster. Just unbelievable disaster. And so here you have this, and this is just a little anecdotal evidence. And this is why we have, so let me back up here just for before I show you this. So this is why we don't want the African-American community, the leadership, the Democrats, the people running these urban areas where blacks are, they don't want to address the real problems because it's a failure. High dropout rates, high unemployment, high food stamp use, high teen pregnancy, high wedlock, babies born out of wedlock. All these jobs leaving America, and Obama's trying to push this thing through. The TPP. How does that help African Americans? Oh, also the flooding of illegal immigrants into the country. How does that help African Americans who have a huge unemployment rate, especially in youth numbers? How does flooding the country with illegal immigrants for entry-level jobs when the African community is, 35, 40%, who knows, depending on the statistic, 35% unemployed, especially with youth unemployment. How does that help the black African-American community? How does it help the African-American community to have, a 550% increase in these Syrian refugees that they won't screen? And incidentally, how does that help the gay community? I mean, you want to have a 550% increase in people whose holy book says it's okay to throw a gay person off a cliff. And in this case, a 10-story building is just fine. How does that help them? How does that help the illegal immigrants already here in America? Seriously. Because there's going to be some sort of a deal eventually. They're not going to deport 11, 12, 13, whatever it is, whatever the number is. How does it help them? It doesn't help them at all. It's a plan to, break the country. I'm going to get to that in just a minute. But here's what I think they're freaking out. Because, you have Donald Trump going to the black community asking for their vote and saying, what do you have to lose? You're basically saying you've been screwed by your leaders. He's right. So here's just a little piece of anecdotal evidence. Just wanted to bring this up. I can't believe this in USA Today this week. Obama's half-brother supports Donald Trump. Are you getting that? Obama's half-brother supports Donald Trump. Did Obama's half-brother support the Republican candidate in the past? You think any of those? Mitt Romney. Do you think Obama's half-brother supported? Can you Google stories that say Obama's half-brother supports Mitt Romney? No. This is anecdotal. I can't back this up. I can't prove it. I think lots of African Americans. I don't know what that percentage is. Way higher than Mitt Romney. Lots of them are going to go, I think I'm going to vote for Trump. I mean, I think, you had Virginia's first African-American governor say, the Democrats are taking advantage. They're taking them for granted, African-Americans, which, of course, they are. You wouldn't have flood the country with illegal aliens if you had a youth unemployment rate in the black community. It's up 25%. Would you do that? They're not helping them. Oh, here's what we'll give you, though. We're going to give you, $15 an hour. We're going to give you a couple of dollars an hour pay raise. Meanwhile, McDonald's mechanizes their operation and everybody else, and then they just don't need those people anymore. But that, I think, is frightening the hell out of the Democrats, that these African Americans, are being asked with a pretty good story for their vote. I think that's scaring them. I really do. And here's Obama, who's having in his son a moment of glory at the UN, giving his last speech. Of course, he's the byline. Let me read what the USA Today totally mischaracterizes this. It's no surprise that some argue that our future favors a strong man, a top-down model rather than a strong democratic institutions. But I believe that thinking is wrong. In other words, that that we're really favoring a strong top. That's exactly what he favors. Now, here's another little quote here, huh? Here we go. Yeah, he's bragging about his New World Order credentials. How he's we should give up some freedom, and it's going to have to give up a little bit of freedom. And here we go. Only by submitting to a one world style government can countries of the world effectively fight terror. This is Barack Obama warned during a speech to the United Nations General Assembly. Yes, give up some of your, you're going to have to give up, some of your freedom in that pesky Constitution. The Bill of Rights and freedom of speech and Second Amendment and freedom of religion. That's pesky. You don't need that. It's unbelievable. Louis Farrakhan takes the cake. President Obama has failed the black community. I hate to agree with Louis Farrakhan, but ding, ding, ding. I want to get to the economy next up. Here's another big money manager. Paul Singer says, everyone is in the dark, warns of a, listen, check this out now, sudden, intense market breakdown. Everybody thinks, hey, whoa, wow, the Fed didn't raise interest rates. That was one of the calls I got right. The Fed wouldn't raise rates, 50 days before an election or whatever, 5-6 weeks before. There's no way. I mean, you talk about sinking Hillary, who's already sinking. I think she's doing much worse in the polls than, I think, most of the polls are phony. I think she's doing much worse. I think Donald Trump will get more Bernie Sanders voters than Hillary Clinton. And incidentally, I was talking to a Bernie Sanders voter tonight. He was a waitstaff, and he's like, I'm not voting for her. I'm not voting for her. I'm going to vote for Jill Stein or Jerry Johnson or Donald Trump I'm not voting for her. You can't disenfranchise overhap because I think Bernie Sanders won the nomination, even with the super delegates, the campaign donors, and all the people that get involved, and have in the selection process. The super delegates, which are the big money people back in, wanting to all the power and the heck with the little people. But you can't disenfranchise half of the voters. This is why, Gary Johnson's at, single digits, 9% or so. Jill Stein's at 3 or 4%. Donald Trump. I mean, these are Stein and Johnson taking votes from the Democrats. So you can't disenfranchise half of your voters and expect to win. And I guarantee you, I think Donald Trump will get more Bernie Sanders voters than Hillary Clinton. But I digress. Everyone in the dark warns of sudden, intense market breakdown. And here we go. Here's another big time money manager. And I'm only talking about the people I brought up, Icahn and Bill Gross, Carl Icahn, Bill Gross, Crispin O'Day, what's his name, Gunlock. You add all that's hundreds of billions of dollars under management, probably approaching $1 trillion. Here's another big, asset manager, $195 billion asset manager. The time has come to leave the dance floor. This is the TCW group. His name is Tad Ravelli. Time to leave the dance floor. And, these guys aren't doing this. for an Ashton Kutcher imitation, punked. They're not, surprise. Oh, just kidding. Things are going to go. The Dow's going to go to 40,000. No, I didn't know. These guys are warning, and I brought this up before. They're not in the business to look stupid. They can't. People trust them with tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars of investment. So, if this thing blows up, they can't say, oh, yeah, I didn't see that coming. They can't say, oh, well, I saw it coming, but I didn't sell any, I didn't tell anybody. Jerk. They have to say, hey, it's coming. So they can say, listen, I told you. We told you. And let me show you what happens. People think that you can just not pay your bond debt. Well, so if you default, listen, here's what happens when you default on $70 billion in bond debt. Puerto Rico blackout enters the second day. Entire island of 3.5 million people without power. They're without power. You think they're going to be able to borrow money to upgrade their infrastructure and their power system after all this fraud? After they borrowed $70 billion and everybody got paid at the end of the year, I don't know, $125 million to all the government employees and $70 billion in fraud for 5 million people. You think they're going to be able to borrow some money to fix their power system? You think they can borrow it at 3 or 4%? 2%? Think they can do that? No. Next time they borrow money, they're going to put up assets. They're going to put up airports and ports and parks and government land and and it ain't going to be 3 or 4%. It's going to be much higher than that. No, they're in the dark down there because of the fraud. Just so you know, North Carolina has, $3 billion where I live. 10 million plus people live in North Carolina. There's $3 billion in bond debt, roughly, for the state, okay? Puerto Rico has 3.5 million people and 70-something billion dollars in defaulted debt. Tell me there's not fraud there, but this is what happens when you do not pay your bills. Bad things happen when you don't pay your bills. They can't even pay the interest on the $70 billion. That's how sad it is. Listen, plenty of metrics out to show you how bad the economy is. You had a big miss on housing. Manufacturing sucks. Things don't look good. But here's something that is especially troubling to me. And I know it isn't huge and earth-shaking, but pretty good considering it's the time of year. Usually when you close stores, you wait till, January, February. Kmart closing 64 stores nationwide now. So 64 stores, they can't wait for the biggest quarter in retail, October, November, December, the Christmas buying season. No, they're shutting down 64 stores now. Is there any wonder why Janet Yellen at the Federal Reserve couldn't raise interest rates? They can raise them if they want to crash the economy. Gregory Mannarino, got on the phone to me and said that, listen, here's what not raising rates means. This is what it really means. This is his interpretation. The Fed basically came out and said the economy is in crisis mode after all this time, in crisis mode. Remember when they raised rates in December of 2015? Of course, we had the worst opening in the stock market ever. And remember when they raised rates and, next year we're going to raise rates 4 times. Well, wow, what a miss. Because so far, they're zero. They have raised rates 0 times. Now they're talking about raising rates again in December. The banks are taking a beating, but, do you implode them with all the derivatives? You raise rates and, you have all this $13 trillion in negative interest rates in the globe. Part of it's in Japan, part of it's in Europe. And if you got a bond paying negative 0.1%, you raise rates and it's now positive 0.1%. That's a 100% increase in interest rates. What happens to that bond? Poof. Yeah. And rates aren't going to go just to there and stop. Now we're charging 0.1% of 1% now. We're not negative anymore. Whoa, glad that's, fixed. We're good. No, rates should, when this thing started in 2008, the federal funds rate, the overnight rate that banks charge each other was 5.25%. It was plus 5%, okay? Now it's 0.38%. It's 35 basis points roughly. They need to be back there. That was just before the crisis. They need to be back to 5%, 3%. I mean, can you imagine what mortgage rates would be? I mean, it's 3.8% or something for 30-year money. What happens if mortgage rates go to, 6.5%, 6%? Oh, I mean, housing starts, I told you, took a big hit. That's with a 3.8% 30-year note and the HARP programs and the no money down loans and the easy money and borrowing a little bit more and giving it back for the down payment at closing, which is fraudulent. Yeah, what's going to happen when interest rates are 6.5%, 7%, 10%? I mean, I mean, this is what these fund managers are seeing, and there's no way out for this. There's no way out. There is no fixing this without massive losses. People aren't going to know what to do. And if we could have a calamity. We could have a calamity easy. I mean, we're teetering. But if we have a war, if we have a big regional war, if they sink one of our ships in the Mediterranean, if the Iranians sink one of our ships in the Persian Gulf, in the Straits of Hormuz, they block that channel. It's only 30 miles wide. At the eastern side of the Persian Gulf, if they block one of our, they sink an aircraft carrier, if they hit one of, I mean, can you imagine what would happen? If we have a war, you get the collapse. You get the war, boom, and then we get the collapse, just like that. Boom, boom, 1, 2. Well, we could get the collapse anyway. And all these fund managers are warning of that. Take them seriously, folks. This is and then here's another a financial story I wanted to bring this up to. I think it was, if it wasn't unanimous, it was close to an unanimous. The House and the Senate voted to allow the victims of the 9/11, the families of the 9/11, the victims who are surviving, to sue Saudi Arabia for, the 9/11. And here we have Obama to veto September 11th lawsuit by Friday, says the White House. They're going to veto that. Well, when you get unanimous or close to unanimous, his veto can be overridden. And do you think anybody, and they put this back on the floor to override this veto, do you think anybody wants to go home before the November election, especially in the House? Do you think anybody wants to go home and say, no, I protected Saudi Arabia? Do you think anybody wants to go home and say that to their constituents? I protected Saudi Arabia. Forget the families that lost loved ones, 3,000 or so families, 3,000 or so people killed, and all the families affected by that negatively. I protected Saudi Arabia. You think any congressman wants to go home and defend that? This is a financial story, folks. And don't think for 1 minute Saudi Arabia couldn't bite us. I mean, if we were really strong and things were really rolling and we had very low debt and high production levels and high productivity levels and everything was running on all cylinders, they probably couldn't hurt us much. We do a lot of our own oil and our own exploration now, and they probably couldn't do much to us, but we're not that. And they have a lot of bonds and a lot of oil, and they have a lot of things that they can do that could hurt us. Now, we just gave them another $1 billion worth of, sold them another $1 billion or so worth of military equipment because they're freaking out. And I wonder about this Iran deal, that it's such a bad deal. I mean, now we find out that the Iran deal wasn't, $400 million in cash and pallets. It was, we're saying the real deal, and I don't know how much of that component was cash, was, something like $30 billion that we gave to them, for this hostage deal. And I wonder if they're not, doing the same thing they did in the 80s with Iran and Iraq and feeding both sides in an 8-year war where these guys just ground each other down, and by the time it was over, not an inch of ground on either side was moved. But a lot of people died. Kept those two sides busy for a while. And I wonder if that's what they're doing now in the Middle East. If they're giving them 100. I mean, this is Jim Sinclair always says this is too stupid to be stupid. And they're not inspecting the military sites. Where are the inspections? This has been going on for a year. Where are the inspections? Have they inspected anything yet, folks? Where's the signed deal? I heard Brent Barrett tell, ever since the deal was signed, no, it was not. Not according to the Kerry State Department and Mike Pompeo, a congressman who had correspondence with him and said, yeah, we didn't sign anything. Oh, really? You didn't sign anything? Yeah, okay. No deal. $150 billion. Of course, it didn't go well enough for the Iranians, and, they are complaining they don't have access to the SWIFT system or whatever. But, I wonder if they're just trying to make as much chaos as possible in America, in the Middle East. I don't know. That's what it looks like they're doing. though. I mean, this is too stupid to be stupid. And we really can't take a big hit. Nobody could take a big hit. And you remember when they said that Deutsche Bank, IMF, and the Federal Reserve, I believe they both called Deutsche Bank in Germany the most systemically dangerous bank in the world. Well, they got hit with a $14 billion fine. As some say it was payback because Apple got hit with a fine in Europe. And so we're hitting Deutsche Bank with a fine, but everybody denies that. But here we go. Deutsche Bank shares tank after CEO rejects the $14 billion Department of Justice settlement for mortgage securities and, mis-selling, fraud, basically. And they're not going to pay it. They're just not going to pay it. I don't even know if they have the money to pay it. And then we have this little story. The Deutsche Bank now slipped below $13 again. I think it's $12.97 as I'm giving you this. And remember, this is the most systemically dangerous bank in the world. Where they have, they've sold off some of their derivative exposure, maybe down to 60-something trillion. Oh, wow, how they'll make it now? They got rid of $7 trillion of derivatives or so. I don't know. The number was 70 trillion. I think they've sold some of that off. But anyway, here we have Deutsche Bank may ultimately need a state bailout according to Handelsblatt, which is that's like Wall Street Journal in Germany. That's their publication over there. Deutsche Bank may ultimately need a state bailout. Really? How are they going to cover? I think it's 43 trillion in euro. You compute that out. What is that? 55 trillion in derivatives in dollars. It's stunning, mind-boggling. I mean, the German GDP is 3.8 trillion dollars a year, and one bank has, 15 times that. I mean, in exposure and leverage. It's unbelievable. And they're not paying their $14 billion. We're not paying it. And here we go again. Wells Fargo. And let me just read what the Senate says about this. Senators slam the CEO of Stumpf for massive fraud over fake accounts. Massive fraud is what the reporting is. There we go. There we go. So you can read it for yourself. The CEO. Massive fraud. They're slamming him. Massive fraud. And they only gave him 100. They fired 5,300 people. They only gave him $185 million fine. Only $185 million. We didn't know this was going on. But look, read the headline here. Read the pompous headline. Wells Fargo CEO, sorry, but bonuses stay. Hey, we stole it fair and square. We're keeping it. What? We stole the money fair and square. We're keeping it. One officer who's resigned got a $125 million payday. What? Excuse me? May get a bonus at the end of the year, too. I mean, you tell me that we don't live in a fraud society. I mean, they feel pretty pompous. I mean, hey. Bonuses stay. We stole it fair and square. 5,300 people. They fired 5,300 people. I just got this cartoon. Here we go. You see what the thing says? Oh, yeah. For taking us in such a criminal direction, I shot the horses. I mean, it would be, I'm laughing, but it's, listen, I'm telling you, this is fraudulent. Sell. Sell. That's unbelievable. It's just really quite frightening. Unbelievable. This is some real reporting. After fines, it's $185 billion. Wells Fargo cut sales goals. So you think? So you rob people by making phony sales, and you cut sales goals? Yeah, really? Now that's news you can use. Wells Fargo cut their sales goals after they were caught, making up phony, fraudulent sales. It's unbelievable. No surprise here with the divided Fed holds off but doesn't expect the stance to last. You like they ever going to raise interest rates 4 times? Really? It's unbelievable. Here's something, just a little odds and ends I want to get in here. Here's something that I'm surprised this is in the USA Today, folks. I mean, I guess they're trying to be fair or given the appearance of trying to be fair, but they're really not. They're in the tank for Hillary along with everybody else. I mean, it's unbelievable. But the press they're killing themselves. I mean, they're killing themselves. And here, let me show you this first. Trump versus the Tramp. I mean, this is Trump and Hillary, which is aired in USA Today. The tyranny of the smoking gun. I mean, it's an op-ed piece. Now, yeah, the Washington Post that won a Pulitzer Prize. That won a Pulitzer Prize for the Snowden revelations, which were and here I'm on their mailing list, and then they did an op-ed piece where they asked for Snowden to be prosecuted. So the guy, the source that gave them a Pulitzer award-winning journalism. Oh, this is the Washington Post. See, this is the email that said, "Hey, we're award-winning journalism, where we ask after we win the awards to have our sources prosecuted." I mean, you can't make that up, folks. This is the Washington Post wanted Snowden. They did an op-ed piece to get Snowden prosecuted. And nothing in the paper, especially op-ed, doesn't go in there without being approved. That's unbelievable. But talk about being in the tank. Here we have a Harvard professor coming out, and they had this post in the Huffington Post, this piece that they said, Hillary, the reasons why Hillary lost, and they're doing a preemptive, why she lost, right? And here we have Harvard professor preemptively blames biased media coverage of Hillary's upcoming. Come on, biased against Donald Trump, but not biased against her. And here we have the USA Today asking this dopey question, is Clinton held to a higher standard? Yeah, if she was, she'd be in cuffs. If she was, the Washington Post and the New York Times and the USA Today would be doing stories about her obvious charity fraud. She got multiple private servers. She smashed up her devices. She erased emails. She had those devices so she could cover up the fact that she was selling favors, taking bribes, while she was at the State Department doing favors for people with her State Department job for her obvious global charity fraud. Then we have the president of Haiti coming out and saying, listen, they tried to bribe me. They raised nearly $14 billion, and we got diddly squat. We got less than 5%. I mean, this is a fraud. And then it's total fraud. Yeah, let's get that. Yeah, breathe in. Is Hillary held to a higher standard? No, she's not. No, she's not. And the reason, let me tell you something. The mainstream press came out and was talking about why it's their right and why they have to. You had this little thing in the, which is, stunning really to me. And, Trump is testing the norms of objective journalism. This was a op-ed piece in the New York Times basically saying it was their duty to stop Donald Trump. There are LA Times, New York Times, CNN, Christiane Amanpour saying they should lie. Chris Cuomo saying we've done everything we can for her. Erasing mistakes, at CNN, the Clinton News Network. I just want to hold this up because it makes me laugh every time I see it. And you've seen it before, but I'll just hold this up, because it is what it is, and it's just funny. I mean, and I heard Trump say this the other day, Clinton News Network. Trump's also been very negative on the Federal Reserve, and he's setting them up, folks. He knows there's something trouble. He's blinded a couple times. We could have an economic meltdown. So is his buddy Carl Icahn. So he's been very critical, and that's another tell. He's very critical of the Federal Reserve. First thing he did when he gets in office is Janet Yellen, poof, gone. But the press. They want to kind of somehow tell you, like you had this Rim Reader saying we should really, take a look and be skeptical of Hillary Clinton, and we should look into her stuff too, which means they're not doing it. And also, the guy Michael Wolff, reporters of their own volition are doing this out of their control. See, what they're trying, they know what they're doing. They know they're acting like political hacks. I mean, obvious political hacks. And it's so obvious they have to say, well, here's why we're doing it. Because they want to, after this is all over, they want to go back to the way it was. Well, now we're going to be truthful. Now we're going to be the objective arbiter of the truth. Now after this is all, that ain't going to happen, folks. They've killed themselves. I think they've already killed themselves. I think they killed themselves bad. One last thing I want to get into: anybody that believes the California water problem is over, and I'm surprised. Again, this is in the USA Today, but on a story like this, it's just straight reporting without any politics involved, and it's the taps are still sputtering in California. And Dane Wigington said, "Hey, this is not over. They're trying to make it look good. They're trying to make it look like it's over." That's the story in USA Today. And if you look here in the map, there's not a spot in that gray area up here. That is that's all dry. This is all degrees of dryness. Has it gotten a little better? Yes. Is it over? Oh, not by a country mile. No. No, it's not over at all. And other parts of the West, it seems like this is spreading, although it's a little less severe in the central part of California, but it's still bad. There's no water. It's not good at all. And so that's, you add in all the other economic and war, and then you add in the drought out in the major growing area. California, last I checked, grows a lot of food, and that's a huge problem. A huge problem. And the last thing I want to do is that I got some email from one of the guys, and it's kind of funny. I'll just share this with you because I'm so serious all the time, but I mean, I feel like I have to tell you the truth. But a little levity here. He says, "Hey man," he sends me this picture. He says, "Hey man, I want you to check out my new bug out place that I've got. I can still watch your show." And so here is the guy. He's sitting there with a beer, and if you notice, this is me in the weekly news wrap up, and he's sitting there. That's his bug out place on the moon, I guess. He sent this to me, which I thought was funny. I wanted to use this last week, but it wasn't on last week. But anyway. So listen, folks, don't be in a state of despair. Be in a state of, okay, what can I do to improve my position? What can I do to help myself? Do I have enough cash? Do I have enough canned food? Do I have, have I lowered my probe? Do I have my cars fixed? Do I have new tires? Do I have new batteries? And if you have money, get gold. If you don't, if you have a little money, get silver. If not, get cash. Make sure you have cash. And remember this, too. Remember this, and this is the most important thing I say every week, and that is fear not. You prepare yourself mentally, physically, above all spiritually. Fear not, God the Father is in charge. I thank you for supporting USA Watchdog with your comments and donations. That's the way I see it. Remember, fear not.